Alrighty, welcome everyone. Welcome. My name's Marty from Birchal, and tonight we're here for the evee webinar. I'll give everyone a little bit of a chance to join over the next 30 seconds. We've got a fair few attendees tonight, a lot of people interested in this webinar, which is great. Really appreciate everyone taking time out of their evening to be here. I'll go through a little bit of a structure before I throw to the evee team for some introductions. We've got 3 members of the team here tonight to answer all your questions and to give you a little bit more information about their company and this investment offer that's coming up on Birchal. So in terms of the structure tonight, we're going to leave plenty of time for audience Q&A because that's what we're here for. So everyone who's joined, you've probably got plenty of questions for the team. I encourage you not to wait if you have any questions. There's a Q&A little panel down the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can just put a question in there anytime. So the questions will be done through the Q&A panel tonight, not by live audience questions. So you'll see a raised hand button there. Don't hit that because we can't actually see anyone else tonight besides us panelists. So put the questions in as they come through. The other opportunity you have is to upvote questions. So if you see a question that you particularly like or you want to ask yourself, by all means, give it a little thumbs up. And that's the way we're going to try and prioritize the questions in terms of which ones are being asked. So the quick question and answer period, that'll be at the end. We'll go for about 45 minutes. Got some quick stuff to go through at the start. So the evee team are going to give a round of introductions very soon. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview about Birchal, the equity crowdfunding platform that evee is using for this raise, just to answer any questions about our role and how it all works, because we understand that some people might be new to this, well, most people maybe. And then the evee team are going to give a bit of a presentation for about 5-10 minutes and then straight into audience Q&A. So I think now we've got a fair few people joined, and thanks everyone for hopping on. What I might do now is pass over to Slava, who is the CEO of evee, to start with some introductions and then pass it around to the rest of the team.
Great, thanks very much, Marty. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm really grateful for everyone's interest in the company and what we're doing. I'm Slava, the founder and CEO of evee. We launched the company back in 2016 with my wife. So I've basically seen the company through from just the 2 of us working on everything and just 1 or 2 vehicles in the fleet up to where we are today, the team of 8 and, the fast growing company. Kirsty joined the team as a COO early in 2021. Would you mind giving a bit of an intro about yourself?
Sure, no problem. So yeah, I'm passionate about sustainable transport, climate solutions, impactful businesses, and that's what drew me to evee. So my background is in operations. I've held COO roles at a couple of other startups. Also an entrepreneur myself. When I was living in the US, I launched and also exited my own business over there. And yeah, I'm very passionate about what we're doing at evee to the extent that I set up the Women in Climate Tech group to help support diversity within our industry. I'm also a mentor for Boomerang Labs and also Ocean Impact Accelerator as well. So supporting other impactful businesses within the climate tech space.
Hey everybody, I'm Keith. I've worked with evee for a couple of years in a few different areas, helping deliver various different projects for the evee business. More recently, I'm handling product direction, and I'll be helping to build our product team and guide product development into the future. I've owned 8 different EVs. I've rented out 5 of them on the evee platform. But previously, I've founded and exited from a digital media business myself in the travel sector. And I just love working on improving digital products that are out there and making them better.
Cool. Thanks for that, guys. We've got the dream team here tonight to answer all your questions from all different angles. And thanks for everyone who's already put their questions in. It looks like we've got a really engaged audience tonight, so keep them coming. And also make sure to upvote questions that you want answered, because that's what we'll do to prioritize them. So I'll jump into a little bit of an explanation about Birchal and crowdsource funding, and I'll keep this brief because we obviously want to hear from evee as soon as possible. So Birchal, we're an equity crowdfunding platform. What is equity crowdfunding? It's essentially a new way, or reasonably new way of, small companies, early stage companies to raise capital. The change in the laws, which came in Australia in 2018, is essentially to allow private companies or public unlisted companies to not have caps on their shareholders, which allows them to go through this type of fundraising. The difference being is before, if you're a private company, you're only allowed to have 50 shareholders on your cap table, which essentially limited that type of investing to people with a lot of money, and also limited these companies in terms of raising and who they could actually go to. So the great news about this new legislation is it allows people who are passionate about these companies to get involved early as an investor, and then also see them grow and benefit from the upside when that happens. So a few things that you need to be aware of when investing in an equity crowdfunding offer. So these are early stage companies that you're investing in. The shares are not liquid. So we're not investing in ASX companies like Telstra, where you can just go ahead and buy and sell the shares as you please. These are long-term investments. So when you buy shares in a company like this, you're kind of in it for the long haul. The great news about that is the upside is also really exciting. So the general ways that you might get a return on investment, if that happens, is through a company being bought by another bigger company, or by a listing on the stock exchange. So actually, evee is a great example because one of the companies that's exited from an equity crowdfunding raise recently was Car Next Door, which was bought by Uber a few years ago, and that's in a very similar space to evee. So that's an example of a company exiting, and the people who bought shares in that equity crowdfunding round would have received a payout once that company got bought. So the great news about this for investors is that it's a regulated space. ASIC has a bunch of rules, and our role at Birchal as a platform is to make sure that the offers that go to market are totally compliant with the ASIC rules. So that's what we do when we're hosting these offers. A few key features of that. Next week, when the investment offer goes live, there'll be what's called an offer document. If you're familiar with other early stage investing, this is similar to a prospectus, but not as big. It contains all the information that you might need to look at before making an investment, including company financials, growth plans, who's running the company. So look out for that next week to answer any of those more in-depth questions. And essentially, once the offer is done, our role at Birchal pretty much ends there. Your shares will be issued through the share registry provider that evee chooses. And then it's sort of the communications will mainly be handled by the company going forward. So that's a little bit of an overview. If you do have any more questions, feel free to chuck them in tonight. The final thing I'll point out is in terms of limits of investing. For anyone who is a retail investor, or I guess a normal investor, you're limited to investing $10,000 in these opportunities. If you are a wholesale investor or a sophisticated investor, you can invest more. The difference being you have to meet some requirements. I won't go into them now, but that's a high level of what you can invest if you're just a retail investor. Cool. Well, I'll pass back now to Slava, who'll go through a bit of a presentation deck for evee, and we'll jump into Q&A straight after that. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Marty. So yeah, we prepared some slides to go over. I hope you've watched our pitch video on the Birchal page, but this will hopefully give you a better overview about the company, where we started, where we headed to as well. I'll keep it intentionally short, just so we leave a bit more time for the Q&A. So feel free to just keep posting the questions there. We'll take them up after the presentation. So evee is an electric car sharing company. We launched in 2016 with just a single Tesla Model S at the time. Very expensive vehicle, and I have to give credit to Tesla at the beginning. They gave us the initial momentum and to actually start the company. What became the motivation is for us to make electric vehicles more accessible and more affordable. So a natural way of doing that was to make them available for rent so that more people could experience them. To clarify, the first 3 vehicles on the platform were actually company owned, but we soon realized that that wasn't a very scalable idea due to the high value of the vehicles, the depreciation, maintenance costs, etc., etc. So we transitioned gradually into a peer-to-peer car sharing model, which is essentially very similar to Airbnb. We have hosts, owners of the vehicles on one side of the platform, and renters, people who need these vehicles to travel or just want to experience what they're like, on the other side of the platform. So as mentioned, we're very much driven by the mission of increasing the electric vehicle uptake. One of the important things in our mission statement is also that we're striving for the vehicles to be powered by renewable energy as well. So electric vehicles are only so good for the environment. We need to also ensure that the energy sources are clean, that they're powered with. And that's what partially differentiates us, I'd say, from the competition as well, is the real focus on the better future for everyone. I think I've already explained how the platform worked, but if you have any more detailed questions about the actual operations of the platform and the company, feel free to ask later, but it is basically an Airbnb platform for electric vehicles. So as I mentioned, it all started 7 years ago. At the time, there was probably less than 1,000 electric vehicles in the whole country. And this is my daughter at the time. She was also born around the same time. You can see how excited she is. And as I mentioned, our goal is to basically just have as many people excited as she is about the future of electric vehicles and clean transport. A little bit more on the impact. We are actively working towards UN SDGs and also planning to undergo a B Corp certification, which is already reflected in our new updated constitution, company constitution, and we really strive towards faster uptake of electric cars and ensuring clean transport. So as you can tell, we really lean towards these goals through our business. Why this market? It is really the traditional car rental market is really ripe for disruption. It hasn't innovated much over the last few years, and it has existed for about 100 years if we take into consideration companies like Hertz and Avis, but there hasn't been much innovation in the industry. These companies traditionally buy large fleets of vehicles, rent them out, and I will talk a little bit more about our competitive advantage and points of difference, but the market itself in Australia is about $3.5 billion and $150 billion globally. And just to mention here, from day one, we were looking at evee as a technology business that could be scaled globally, and we are capable of applying the same principles, the same business model in different geographies as well. And within the industry, which is even more exciting, the electric vehicle uptake is really starting to take off now. So electric vehicle sales is the only segment, the fastest growing segment today out of all car sales. So a little bit more on how we differentiate from traditional car rentals as well as other car sharing companies. So first of all our process from the moment the user lands on our platform up until they pick up and return the vehicle, it's all very seamless. We think through, from the point they land on the website to the checkout, to the handover, to return of the vehicle. So we really focus on the user experience. Some of the points of difference, because we have hosts on one side of the platform, they're often willing to spend a bit of time with the renters, explain how the vehicle works, all the features, help them plan the route. So that really creates this personalized kind of experience. They're also willing to often share access to the vehicle app as well, which forms a really big part of the overall rental experience as well. So interestingly enough, we are also very competitive on price with traditional car rentals. That is primarily because fleets really need to meet their bottom lines and be profitable to stay afloat. For us as a platform, many hosts are happy if they just reduce the cost of ownership. They don't necessarily need to make a profit from their vehicles. We do have amazing success stories, though, when someone started with a single car and then they grew the mini fleets up to 4 and 5 vehicles. So it can be profitable as well. However, many of the hosts are just happy with the reduced cost of ownership because they still get to use the electric vehicles that they love. So where we're at today, we are today the largest 100% electric car sharing platform in Australia. We've got proven traction. As I mentioned, we've run for 7 years, but the first 3 or 4 years were really quite stale because of the lack of electric vehicles in the country. However, it helped us to establish the company as a brand, solve many insurance problems, find our customers, understand our customers, and really position ourselves well for the growing market that is today. We've got a breakthrough insurance solution, which allows us to cover vehicles up to $150,000 in market value, which is a point of difference compared to other car sharing platforms. And obviously, as I mentioned, it's a completely software-based product, so it's highly scalable. Wherever there is an electric vehicle, we can basically help rent it out. And as I mentioned, the values that we stand for really help us attract the passionate team and create a unique culture that sets us apart as a workplace. Just some metrics over the last several years. As I mentioned before, the first up to 2019, it was really difficult to scale the business because of the lack of electric cars. And also the insurance cost at the time was around $12,000 per vehicle per year. Now that has dropped to anywhere between $2,000 and $3,500. In 2019, we finally managed to negotiate this breakthrough insurance deal, and that really helped us scale. That was also the time when the first more affordable electric vehicles started coming to Australia, such as Tesla Model 3, followed by many others. And that really helped us scale the business over the last few years. This is our amazing team, just the management team. As I mentioned, it's 8 of us at the moment. We already did a round of introductions. Kyril's not with us today, but he's been basically overlooking all the technical side of the platform, building the tech. As I already mentioned, I believe that technology is what sets us apart as well. So we will always continue to have a core technical team within the business. It's a customer-facing product. It's really important that it works well. So Kyril's been in the team full-time since 2019 as well. And this is where we're at with our capital raise. We're raising up to $2 million. We will be releasing more information next week, as Martin mentioned. And just today, we broke 1,000 EOIs that have been submitted, which is really exciting. To be honest, the response to the crowdfunding campaign has exceeded our expectations. So yeah, we're very excited to have you all today submitting your interest and many other people to join the company. Thank you.
Thanks, Slava. That's a great overview. And I hope that gave a lot of information for the audience to base some questions off. We have plenty of questions here, so I'll just jump straight in. And again, starting with those that have received the most upvotes. I have a question here from Tim Archer, who is asking, what is your moat? Once Hertz, Avis, etc. wake up and buy an EV fleet, how will you maintain your competitive advantage? And just have a comment here from Marcus Allen, who mentioned that you did maybe cover this at the Fully Charged festival, but I imagine you probably want to add some more context to that now.
Sure. Yeah, happy to explain a bit better. Look, Hertz already have electric vehicles in the fleet. I think I kind of mentioned briefly some of the competitive advantages we do have in the presentation. First of all, it's price, and second, very important, it's customer experience. From the moment people land on the platform until they pick up the vehicle and go through the whole rental experience. Traditional car rental companies are trying to fit electric vehicles into their existing business model, which is buying hundreds of vehicles, renting them out for a couple of years, and then on-selling them. It also means that they have smaller variety of electric cars, so you would always find the same electric vehicles, whereas with our hosts, we have a really wide range of vehicles, from performance cars to different brands. You know, we have Hyundai Ioniq, we have Kia EV6, we've got Mercedes CQC, Tesla Model Y, Model 3, performance, non-performance. So if you go with traditional fleets, it's usually just limited to a white sedan or hatchback, an SUV, and that's all. I think Kirsty might have something else to add on this as well.
Sure. I just don't think many people love the experience of renting a car. We do it. We get to the airport. We, try and find the bus that takes us to the location. There's, some guy with a clipboard. You get a car that you didn't exactly book. It's all similar. So there's something to be said about getting the actual car that you booked online, being able to meet at a convenient time, not having to fill out loads of paperwork. We do all the driver verification online. And then you get this one-on-one with a host, which we know is really important right now because so many people are experiencing EVs for the first time through our platform. So they have a lot of questions, and our hosts are essentially EV ambassadors. We probably sold a hell of a lot of Teslas just by our hosts meeting the renters and talking them through it. And I have my own Model 3 on the platform, and I'd say most people coming through, it's the first time they've ever driven an EV, and I spend time with them because I want them to be safe and I want them to know all parts of the vehicle before they set off. But you don't get that from traditional car rental companies. Obviously, over time that would change. More people will become EV owners, and we're starting to see that more. It's people who are using our platform, have EVs back home, they're traveling internationally or interstate, and they're choosing to book an EV with us because they can consider driving a petrol car ever again. So obviously we think that the experiences can really expand from that. We could look into contactless handovers. The convenience location actually works quite well as well. A lot of our hosts do, for an extra fee, can drop off the car to any location. So I'd say 1 in every 4 of my bookings is an international person coming in, and I drive to the airport. I'm fine to do that for an extra fee. And there's a lot of convenience there as well. So what we're really trying to do is not just accelerate the adoption of EVs, which is really important to all of us, but it's really just disrupt the whole experience of renting a car. And every startup says we're the Airbnb of, it's quite a cliche, but really Airbnb did really disrupt the way that people travel. And so for us, we feel it's time for the car rental industry to have a bit of a shake up. So there's a big market here, 1.5 billion in Australia, so there's enough to go around.
Great, thanks for that. Really, really good points there, I think, about trying the different electric vehicles, because there's a lot more coming to the market now. I'm just picturing that the smorgasbord of electric vehicles for people to choose from, because I think throughout your campaign it's been pointed out a fair bit that with the trend towards electric vehicles, all this stuff is really important in terms of removing people's anxiety. Like you said, Kirsty, asking questions of people who actually own electric vehicles is really important. Thanks for those answers. It's really good stuff. And thanks for the question. Next question here, which has received the most upvotes, from James Downs, saying, which countries/regions do you plan to expand to first? I'm imagining this is outside of Australia.
Sure. So we have just soft launched in New Zealand already. We've gone throughout 2020. We went through all the regulatory requirements, legal requirements to actually start operating in New Zealand. So why we chose New Zealand first? Because it's the #1 travel destination for Australians and vice versa. A lot of our customers are travelers, whether international or interstate, so it makes sense. And also it's relatively close. We also actually had a team member who just relocated from Auckland to Sydney, so it's easier to start onboarding the vehicles and find renters in New Zealand. The reason we chose that is we wanted to learn what it's like to launch in a new country. So, we basically had to tick off all the technical customization that we had to go through, the legal requirements, the regulatory requirements in terms of operating a car sharing fleet. Also, what does it take to find the hosts in the new country? Now we have created this blueprint and basically a game plan to go further. So our eyes are on the UK in the future with a higher electric vehicle uptake. 2 of our team members that are in front of you, not myself, they are also from the UK. So we feel like it's a relatively friendly market for us to enter in the future.
Cool, thanks for that. It makes a lot of sense, New Zealand being the first. I imagine a lot of repeat customers from your existing base will be traveling, and so maximizing for that makes a lot of sense. Next question with the most upvotes here is asking, Turo have recently entered the Australian market. What is your competitive advantage over them, they have a known global brand already, together with the technology platform, e.g. app and community?
Yes, thank you. So that's a bit different to, I guess, the traditional car rental that we just spoke about. My view is we welcome the competition. First of all, it really validates the market. If a strong entrant from overseas is entering the market, it means there is money to be made, which is great. We already had some conversations with Turo as well, with their plans, etc. I guess when it comes to an existing car sharing platforms, the differentiation might be a bit more subtle, yet it's actually stronger from the customer perspective. So we really lean on the electric vehicle experience, which determines some of the features that we have on the platform, such as providing, information about compatible plugs for the vehicle that you're renting, helping customers with planning their their trip around charging stops. This will also determine some of the features we develop in the future as well. Whereas for a large competitor, an electric vehicle most likely will remain just as a search filter for quite some time, which undermines, some of the experience. We've also reviewed the pricing models as well. I mean, I understand this will change, but some of the advantages we have today is, Keith, maybe you can take it up actually, because we looked at it a couple of months ago, if you want to add to this.
Sure. Speaking with my host hat on rather than my product hat, as someone who's hosted vehicles on the platform, and I've obviously looked at Turo in the context of working at evee as well as hosting. Considering hosting on Turo is quite complex from a host perspective, from an owner's perspective. Not to bash their product in any way, just purely observing that the different levels of commissions and various plans need some thought as a vehicle owner before you jump in. The other aspect as a host of an electric vehicle is that knowing that my renters coming through are coming specifically for an EV and haven't booked it just because they saw the brand and thought, oh, I'll give that a shot. They know they're coming to EV for an electric vehicle, whereas through Turo, the customer, anecdotally, what we've heard from other owners who have put their vehicles on Turo is that the quality of renter that they get is quite hard compared for them to deal with compared to listing their vehicle on EV. So we are here to support our hosts. That's really what it comes down to. We can't operate the business without a good fleet on the platform and a great collection of owners who manage their vehicles for us. So we're really here to take care of them, and that's a key differentiation for us.
Yeah, I would also, thanks Keith. I would also quickly add just on the pricing model as well, because we looked at it. We strive to basically what you see is what you get, is what you pay, I should say. With competitors, regular pricing that you see on Turo, at least today, since we're talking about them, doesn't include any insurance coverage at all. So you kind of get this additional fee that you're surprised with at the checkout that you actually need to pay extra for just, reduce your liability from, tens of thousands of dollars down to a reasonable amount. We always include that in our pricing and just try to be as transparent as possible with the customers from the moment they land on our platform.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like I think from you describing the experience that you're providing on EV, it does seem quite different to the traditional like car next door Turo model, and therefore it makes a lot of sense to have a specific platform doing what you're doing. Car next door, they usually just leave the keys in the lockbox and let you go do your thing. And if you haven't driven an electric vehicle before, you might do yourself a mischief trying to figure that out. So makes a lot of sense there. Next question here coming in from Ethan. Thanks for your question. Ethan's asking, may I know the number of shares on offer, the price per share, and I think dilution as well. Now, I'll just flag that all this information will be in the offer document, so we do need to keep a bit of this under wraps until the offer launches on Tuesday, because there's still a little bit of a ways to go in terms of finalizing everything here. But it's a very very valid question about how you arrive at a valuation for a company like yours and how you decide like what ownership you want to give away. So if you'd like to speak to some of the processes you use to come to that decision, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Marty. As you mentioned, all the details are in the offer document, which is currently being reviewed by the Birchal team. So we're finalizing all the details about the share price, the valuation, etc. So please stay tuned. We will release it all next Tuesday. In terms of the valuation, just for reference, you could probably take a look at some of the company exits in the similar space. Marty already mentioned Car Next Door. It was a private acquisition. So we don't really know the price, that it was acquired for. But our guess is that it would be similar to Camplify. So Camplify, if you haven't heard, is another not really competitive platform to us, but they do peer-to-peer sharing of caravans, RVs, motorhomes, etc. They listed on ASX, don't want to be, in July 2021, and they were valued at just over $110 million from memory. So that's when I think when it becomes sort of sensible for a company to consider an ASX listing or consider private acquisition as well. So we kind of scaled back to where we're at today from those figures and arrived at a valuation that we think is sensible. Also underpinned by the fact that electric vehicle niche, which is the one we're focusing on, is really the fastest growing niche within the market at the moment. So I hope that gives a bit of an overview, a bit of an idea, but yes, please, we'll reveal more information next week once it's finalized and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And really valid question. There's a lot of context that goes into a decision like this, like the financials and the growth plan and the cap table, which you'll all be able to see on Tuesday. So stay tuned for that. We got to keep it sort of under wraps until then. Question here, a few parts of this question, and I think this one might be for you, Keith, talking about sort of the product roadmap here. So Brendan's asking, an app would be really important for being taken seriously in the market. First question, is this on the roadmap? Second question around the long-term Moonshop app. Does this include Uber-like functionality where people can request rides and be assured of an EV or renewable tech type car? There's a few more questions here, but I might just start with those two and then see how we go.
Yeah, sure. I can see Brendan's questions in the Q&A as well, so happy to run through them. Yes, app is first cab off the rank in our product roadmap. The scale of that app is up for grabs in terms of how deep we go, but at its core, it'll be about allowing renters to make and change bookings and for hosts and renters to communicate with each other. It's a necessity for us into the future. So that's a given. We have many other aspects to our product roadmap as well, which we are going to be in the offer document to varying degrees. But to speak to them super quickly, we're looking at how we can build in add-ons for reducing excesses or damage liability as we know it within the product. So that's an upsell. We've got a whole area of user interface overhaul that we need to or want to get through to improve our conversions. We're looking at how we can improve our marketing tech, basically look at how we can improve our analytics and affiliate tracking, make sure that we're delivering ROI for all of our marketing efforts. More excitingly for me, I'm super pumped about wanting to release an EV rewards program for renters. We're also looking at how we do pricing optimization for our hosts as well. So at the minute, all of our pricing is set by our hosts, and we're looking at ways that we can get into helping them price their vehicles effectively within the market that they're in. So there's a number of things that we want to do. As for timing and capability to do them all, we'll see, but that's what we're looking at. In terms of the second question, including Uber-like functionality where people can request rides and be assured of an EV or renewable tech type car. No, that's not in the roadmap, as you would have just heard. We offer, just for context, we do offer our owners the ability to use their vehicles for rideshare under our insurance policy, but that's not a feature that we offer within our platform ourselves.
Thanks for that, Keith. And thanks for your question, Brendan. There's a few more parts to that, but I think we might prioritize other questions because we've got 38 unanswered sitting here at the moment. So we'll get to those ones first. But yeah, really good question about the product roadmap there. Question here from an anonymous attendee. There's a few parts to this question as well. And again, just so we can get to all the other questions, I might just break this down into the crux, which I think is getting towards the important business metrics for your team. So question here is asking, about some metrics such as average revenue per annum per host. How's that changed over time? Average number of rentals per guest, is that important? And then, what other metrics do you see as critical to your operations?
Sure. I was going to pass this to Kirsta. I think we're kind of on the same page with these.
Yeah, so average revenue, well, we're seeing that our host is averaging about 8 days a month on average across the fleet. We imagine this will stay steady because we have two types of hosts on the platform. We have the host who is sharing their car. It's not always available because sometimes they want to use it. But also there's the hosts that are listing the cars to have maximum amount of utilization. And we're seeing actually this is quite an interesting segment of our host customer base, because similar to what Camplify or their journey, they started out as peer-to-peer. And then they realized over time that a lot of businesses, microfleets, were using that platform for the marketing, for the customer service, payment functionality, and we're starting to see businesses start to list their fleets and use evee as a platform for those uses. So there are people, hosts on our platform who started out as car sharing with their own vehicle and then went on to purchase a second, third, fourth vehicle. Looking at Keith there, and some of our other hosts as well, that have seen the business case for this. So some of our vehicles are making 25 grand a year, which is great, but obviously you need to have the calendar available for all of that time. For myself, with my own vehicle, there's some dates in the month that I want to use it, so it's not always available 100% of the time. But for myself, I made 15 grand last year, which is really great because it covered off all of my loan repayments on my vehicle, so it's essentially covering the cost of ownership of the car. Sorry, what was the second part of the question? I think it's disappeared from the...
Yeah, I did disappear that. I think the other metric was talking to, here it is, average numbers of guests per year, and then just any other critical metrics that you have for the business.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, sorry, go ahead, Sava.
Oh no, I can add to that. Our average rental is about 3.2 days now, which has actually gone up in 2022 financial year from about 2.1. So that gives you an idea of the type of rental that we get. It's really people going on road trips or traveling for business or leisure. So in terms of the rental days, last year, calendar year, we exceeded 8,500 rental days in 1 year, and I think our biggest months to date was November last year at 926. So that's where we're at, and you will really see the growth charts in the offer document that we will share. I think you've seen that in the presentation earlier as well, but we're really more than double, twice now the number of rental days, as well as the vehicles on the platform. So these are our main KPI is rental days. That's where we track the most.
And other metrics really would be looking at the impact side of our business, and this is part of us going through the B Corp certification as well. Is looking at the tonnage of carbon emissions that have been prevented from through renting of our vehicles. So this is an important metric for us because we want to understand the impact of our business, like how much carbon emissions we're preventing, but this is also going to be very beneficial for our B2B customers. So this is something that we're hoping to explore a bit more. So businesses are having obviously a lot of heat to look at their ESG, to look at their environmental credentials, and the biggest way that businesses can reduce, or one of the biggest ways they can reduce their environmental footprint, is reduce the emissions of their corporate travel. So if a company is looking to book car rentals, if we're able to provide them that data around what were the emissions of that particular trip, they'll be able to use that within their carbon tracking if they're looking to becoming carbon neutral as a business. And we know that this is the way the world is going, that any ASX listed business needs to be reporting on their ESG at the moment. So obviously a lot of companies are following suit, and we feel that this is a real point of difference. If we're able to provide that data about how many tons of emissions we're preventing and how many emissions are still being produced, and that's the difference between a car being an EV being powered by the grid versus, and also different states, but also if it's powered by renewables. And this is something that we're really going to be looking into how we track this. So this is working with the hosts. Luckily, most of the public charging networks are powered by renewables, so that's something we'd be able to monitor, but really looking at how we can work closely with the host to understand how they charge at home before they pass on the vehicles to the renters.
Thanks for that, Kirsty. Yeah, I don't think there'd be many complaints if your work offered up a Tesla instead of the normal rental car. So that's a really good point and a really good way for acquiring customers. Good strategy there. Cool. So just moving down the list, and thanks everyone for your questions. We've got 41 unanswered questions. I don't think we'll get to all of them tonight. So I'd encourage you to upvote the ones that you're particularly keen on getting answered, because again, we're prioritizing that. And thanks to everyone for sticking around. We've got more than 150 attendees here tonight. Shows that everyone's really engaged with this opportunity, and yeah, really appreciate you taking some time. So question here from Igor, who's asking, so what have you learned from Turo in the US that you are looking to apply to evee?
That's actually a really good question retrospectively. You know, we launched the business back in 2016, like I said, when it was very early days for electric cars. And the reason we built the platform the way it is and intentionally avoided any kind of hardware was because we looked at what Turo were doing. They launched several years earlier than us in 2009 in the US, obviously servicing all kinds of vehicles. But they really started growing rapidly when they removed all kind of hardware from the vehicles, lock boxes, access boxes, basically, from the vehicles. And that's what really allowed them to take off. So that's probably the biggest learning operationally. In terms of the experience, we feel, like I said, there is a few points of difference where we feel we actually provide a better customer experience and the way our brand stands out from Turo. I would say this one operationally is probably the biggest learning so far.
Cool. Yeah, a lot of focus on Turo coming into the Australian market as well, but yeah, plenty of lessons there from their success in the United States. Next question here from Pavel, asking about how do you plan to use the funds raised from this round, and what is the timeline for implementation?
Sorry, I kept thinking about the previous question. Can you repeat that? Sorry.
No worries, all good. Yeah, so just asking, how do you plan to use the funds raised, and what is
sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. So look, the two priorities for us are product development, what Keith said, and continuing to fund the growth through the marketing channels that we already have built and established and proven that they work. We just need to fund them to make sure we continue, you know, to secure the electric vehicle rental niche that we're in today. So it's obviously key hires as well to help us grow the company. Once again, Kirsty might add to this as well, because we were talking about it just today in regards to the offer document too. So
yeah, we've done 3 scenarios based on kind of the lowest amount that we might raise through Birchal to the maximum, and what those 3 scenarios would look like. So it's basically how fast can we run. So if obviously we meet our maximum, that's great. It's like obviously we've got a much bigger budget to hire the full team. It would just be a bit of a slower process if it's a lower amount. And this is really bringing marketing heads in-house, making sure that we're really protecting the brand. That's something that we've really been investing in performance marketing to date, but there's to really step up in terms of visibility. We need to be doing a lot more kind of brand marketing on that side of things. And I think we've done a really good job then. By the way, we did a rebrand 18 months ago, and I think our brand looks beautiful, great style of photography, they're definitely very recognizable. But then in terms of key hires, definitely investing in the tech then, and it's ensuring that we have that tech stack in-house as well. So it's really building up the tech team, marketing team, and then a few other operational hires that we need as well to scale. But we're quite a lean team, being a software company, and also being mostly remote. It's we actually are quite nimble, and we've to this date have behaved like a lean startup, and I think that we will continue to behave like that. We're not going to be this bloated team. My background is really in kind of is building and developing teams and culture. So I think that we're going to be very conscious about how we really spend these funds in terms of ensuring that there's a nice split between building up the team, investing in tech, and investing in marketing as well.
Cool. Yeah, sounds like you got a solid plan there. And then, yeah, different sort of scenarios based on how much you raise, a little bit of information for people not familiar with Birchal. You'll have a minimum and maximum target once the offer goes live. Once evee hits their minimum target, it's funded, so it's going ahead, and then they can push all the way up to the maximum target. Obviously, the reason why is because we're not exactly sure how much we're going to raise based on people's interest. There is a question down here which is worth answering at this time from Paul, who's saying, it seems like with 1,000 expressions of interest and you're trying to raise 2 million, you might be oversubscribed. So that'd be great if every single person came through, Paul, but generally they don't. But maybe this will be the exception to that rule. But yeah, once a company hits their maximum target, that's it. You can join a wait list, if you do miss out. But this is the incentive for getting in early, because these offers do max out, especially if there's a lot of interest around them. So everyone who's registered for an expression of interest, you get early access to this offer before it actually goes live to the public. So that's your advantage for registering early. So actually, when the offer goes live next Tuesday, there's a 2-day window that's only available for people who've registered early. And that's your incentive to get in early and invest if you want to. Cool. Question here from Igor, who's asking, how do you plan to shift your fleet to renewable energy in the future in alignment with your vision?
Great. Well, yeah, Kirsty previously mentioned, once again, that's her expertise. But most of the vehicles today, electric vehicles, when they're rented out, they're charged on public infrastructure, and most of the networks today are powered by renewable energy. That's, we've researched them all, including Tesla Supercharging Network, ChargeForks, Jolt. They're all powered by renewable energy, and that's where most of the rentals are charged. When the vehicles are charged at home, we will definitely be putting more a better framework in terms of tracking how the hosts are charging those vehicles as well. This is kind of a little bit outside of our operations, but we still want to understand as a future B Corp how all the stakeholders that we are affecting using their vehicles and what's the impact of them using their vehicles. From the ownership perspective, though, I can speak that it makes complete sense if you have an electric vehicle to also look into solar panels for your house, energy storage, and other products that are related and support the renewable energy transition as well. They work the best in the package. So, yeah, Kirsty, if you have something to add here as well.
Sure. Yeah, so really it's working with the host to understand how they charge at home, because most people renting these vehicles will be traveling, they will be using the public infrastructures. We're working with speaking with the most of the networks here and the charging networks, and that's something we really want to develop, those partnerships about how we can help educate any of the renters coming in, especially the overseas ones, about how they how they charge, and to ensure that they're using the public charging networks. Perhaps that's lining up some discount with certain charging networks to sort of shun them towards those renewable sources. But then, as Slava said, it's really about educating a lot of the EV owners at home, perhaps maybe having a partnership with a solar installation company, offering some discounts there, battery storage. Like, how can we support our hosts to move to renewable? And this is, obviously, it's why we're in business. It's our mission. It's our theory of change. It's why we all get up in the morning. It's what we care about. But there is a business sense to this as well. Like I said, going back to being able to put a carbon emission, number on each journey, I think will really help us as we scale in that kind of B2B sense, that we move with the world is moving towards this carbon accounting, and we're really going to be ahead of the curve. I just can't imagine any other car sharing company or car rental company even thinking about this at this time. So I think this will definitely help us in the short term and long term.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess another advantage of just being electric vehicle focused at the moment. Question here from Harshal, who's asking, essentially, with the adoption of electric vehicles only increasing in Australia, do you see some issues with, people basically not being inclined to rent EVs because either their friends and family have an EV and they can go try that one out, or take that for a test drive? So yeah, what do you see in terms of the future with electric vehicle adoption sort of, always going to be on that upward trajectory?
I want to answer this one, if that's okay. Like, when you rent a car, do you borrow your friend's car? No, you rent a car. It's like, with this, we want to replace how people rent vehicles. And also, the sharing economy is really important to us as well. Like, this whole notion of one person, one car, Gen Z, for example, not really buying cars, so it's kind of shifting this mindset about how we travel, how we get around, and that people will always need to rent cars. People are always traveling, that if they actually go to a place where they don't have any car ownership, perhaps they, will be just using car rental services. And again, we're seeing this with millennials and Gen Zs in cities across Australia. People don't own cars, but they use something like GoGet for short trips? What if it's a mixture of these short trips along with, EV for longer trips? So, we actually think that, car rental needs might increase. And actually, as more people are EV owners themselves, or that, have experienced EVs, they're going to preference EVs over petrol cars.
So yeah, it's just, I would add to that, I've been very patiently waiting for electric vehicles to become more affordable and to become more widespread over the last 7 years. In 2016, there was basically 3 options, and the cheapest one was a BMW i3 with, $85,000-$90,000, a little four-seater vehicle. So we're seeing that shift today, and it's really helping our business grow. We really want the default rental option for someone to become an electric car rather than petrol car, and that's how we will continue to compete in the marketplace, by providing better experience, better pricing, etc. So we feel that it will only benefit us long term.
Absolutely. Got a few more questions here. We've got 48 unanswered questions, which we're definitely going to get to tonight. There's going to be other methods for getting your questions answered throughout the investment period, which we can maybe just talk to you briefly now. So obviously, you can reach out to the team directly. There's also going to be a discussion board once the investment offer's live. So if you have any questions, you can put them in there, and then they're going to be available for everyone to see. But just so everyone's aware, if they do have unanswered questions and they want to maybe follow up with the team, what's the best way to do that?
And we're opening the Birchal forum. Because we have
specifically talking about like emails, if they're emails.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So look, you can email me directly, because for the expressions of interest, that's Slava, SLAVA @evee.com.au. I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. That was in the presentation as well, my contact details. So email is probably best. Just because these days I'm very busy with phone calls and review the final details of the document offer. So emails preferred. Feel free to get in touch. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Yeah. So feel free to follow up the team directly. But like I said, come Tuesday when the offer's live, there'll be a public forum for questions and answers as well. A few questions here to get through from Abby, who's got a couple here. So first question is, what are your margins? I'll ask the next one as well, at the same time, which is, what is limiting your growth at the moment?
Great questions. On the margins, so just a bit more on the business model. All the listings are free. Our business model is very simple. We just charge 35% commission on all bookings. So from that 35% commission, we have insurance costs, which is probably the biggest cost, but there's also a referral agreement with our insurer that helps us generate additional income from those insurance fees as well. So that's our simple commission structure. Sorry, the second part of the question was...
So what are your margins?
What's limiting our growth? Yeah,
what's limiting your growth?
Limiting our growth is basically, I would say, we've already proven the concept. Our business model is scalable. It's basically just funding this proven business model and marketing machine so that we can scale. Together with the increasing uptake of electric vehicles as well, we're estimating, similar to Airbnb, obviously, sharing electric vehicles with someone else isn't for everyone, but there is that target, percentage of people who are willing and want to do that. Similar to Airbnb, there's probably 1 to 1.5% of all apartments are listed on Airbnb. With electric cars, it's probably the same. So with increased electric vehicle uptake, we will continue to grow as well. But as we want to scale geographically, horizontally, we want to obviously fund our marketing activities as well. So at the moment, it's the funding, hence we're raising the funds through the equity crowdfunding campaign to fund the growth.
Cool. Thanks for that. Got another question there from Abby, but I might just try and get to a few other ones while we have a couple of minutes left, and we will probably just try and get through a few more. And like I said, we've got other options.
Yeah, sorry, I'll jump in. I'm not sure if I answered the question about margins really well. I'm not sure. I just talked about the commission that we take. So the 10% out of the 35 goes to our insurer for managing the policy and, administering everything that goes behind the scenes, any claims, any kind of issues in that regard. Out of that 10%, we then receive a 35% referral fee as well from the insurer. It is a little bit complex, but this is how the insurance policy and referral agreement works at the moment. Yeah. Our main costs are insurance, as you might have guessed. It's becoming a bigger part of the problem, but also is an opportunity as well. As we continue to grow, we're thinking of more vertically integrating the insurance product, the onboarding on the insurance product as well. But that's all, in our sort of medium-term future. The other costs that we have that are direct costs are basically just processing the bookings, and everything else is operational expenses, such as wages and salaries, marketing expenses, any kind of activities, legal fees, etc., etc. So in terms of the fixed costs, they're very few. It's just insurance and booking processing fees. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. I mean, yeah, obviously a very central part of the business, insurance. You can understand why that makes up a big portion of your costs there. We probably have time for like one more question, and then I'll just throw to the evee team for sort of final words and comments. Not to end on a downer, but this is probably a good question to ask. So, in terms of potential risks or challenges facing the company, what do you see as those, and how do you plan to mitigate them?
Sure. So, look, there are a few, and all of them are covered in the offer document that's coming up as well. The biggest challenges, we feel we have a really good competitive advantage in terms of where our brand is at the moment. So that's how we manage the new competition entering the market. And as I mentioned before, we just welcome the competition. On the flip side of that, that also creates a potential acquisition opportunity going forward as we continue to grow the brand. So competition is one. Technology, we feel also quite confident that we can build a good product and customer experience to continue retaining our customers. One of the insurance challenges, once again, just to give a bit of a background, when we started the company, no insurer wanted to hear the word Tesla, let alone car sharing of electric cars. So we really had to persist just to get this first deal in place. And the number of underwriters in the market today is very limited. So we're doing our best to manage the risks of the actual vehicles, but there is potentially a risk of a major loss happening that can make our insurance premiums, much higher, which will obviously reduce our potential, our growth potential. So that's probably one. What we do about that is we doing our best to manage the risks of vehicles. Electric cars are inherently safer than newer than petrol vehicles in general, so they have more safety features in place. And so far, claims ratio has been quite good in that sense. I'm sure there are some operational challenges and risks as well that can be described. Anyone? Yeah, I hope I've covered a few. Anyone else has?
I think another lockdown and nobody can travel. I think that's a big risk. But I mean, looking at how we fared during COVID, Perth was great. WA, the bookings were fantastic, but it really hit us, and that you can see that in our numbers, and it's just disheartening. Like, where would the company be if we hadn't had lockdown of like our vehicles for so long? But yeah, I think hopefully that isn't a risk. Hopefully we're not going to have more lockdowns in the future, but definitely something to flag in terms of our journey today, where there was a definite dip, because we're linked to travel. So yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just to add to that, our business model is really nimble. Once again, compared to fleets, we don't have any of the depreciation costs, finance costs, none of the maintenance costs that come with vehicles. So as a platform, we're very nimble. Obviously, we don't want the cost reduction to be at the expense of reducing the team, because we have an incredible team. But if worse comes to worse, we can sort of work with this, because we don't have a large depreciating asset on our books, basically.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, knock on wood, no more lockdowns, but if there was, the people with the fleet vehicles would still be wearing those depreciation costs, and EV wouldn't necessarily. I did want to finish on another question, because I noticed that one was about risk, which isn't necessarily the high note we want to finish off with. So this is a bit of a selfish question for me, because I'm actually outside of a metro area too, so I'm interested in this one as well. But Andrew here is asking, do you see opportunities to stimulate growth and interest outside of metro areas?
Absolutely. Look, we've had vehicles at different points in time. What you're seeing today on the platform is just a snapshot of what's available today. But we had vehicles in Alice Springs. There was a Tesla Model S there. We had cars in Albury as well. So we would love to definitely support regional electric vehicle experiences and rentals. And we've worked. When we do get interest from a local owner, we try to support them as much as we can, and also try to tailor this experience with kind of some local experiences outside of just renting the vehicle as well. So yeah, that would be amazing if we could do that.
I think that would be a really good opportunity that, there's these kind of bubbles happening across Australia about electrifying neighbourhoods and how neighbourhoods are coming together. It would be really wonderful if neighbourhoods could share vehicles, they could purchase them collectively, share them amongst themselves, and use our platform for the insurance, for the booking features, and that could hopefully create revenue as well for those communities. So I think it would be great if there was any, government initiatives, or if we actually worked in partnership with some of the charging networks and looked at how we could launch this as maybe a community initiative. I think it would be a really great way to support regional areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest there for that. I think we're moving away from this one person, one vehicle model, and really excited that you guys are on the forefront of that. Final one now, just to end on. So, there's probably a lot of people on the call who are obviously very interested in this investment offer, which opens next week. What's the final word for them if they're, on the fence a bit about investing in EV? Why should they get involved? What's the word there?
I would say, look, we've been running for 7 years now, so the business is not, on the timeline, it's not a startup, but, I just think the timing is right now. We've been waiting for quite some time for the electric vehicle uptake to really take off in Australia, and I feel like we've created all the essentials in the business to really take advantage of this, rising tide of electric cars. So we're riding the wave at the moment. So I think with like any investment opportunity, the timing is one of the most important things, and I think it is now. So
great. So everyone on the call, that's your opportunity now. Not only can you support EV by being customers and hosts, but you can also be involved with this important capital raise. So if you're backing them in and you like their mission, this is your chance to be involved, because investment opportunities like this don't come around too often, especially for private companies. It's literally just a 2-week window. So that's my spiel. That's my call to action. Thanks everyone for sticking around. We had a big attendance tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time and all the questions that came in. We still had 55 unanswered questions. And like we said, there's other methods for those being answered. Stick around for Tuesday. That's when the offer goes live. For EV, there'll be further details to come. But like we said, for the first 2 days, you will all have exclusive access. So make sure you pencil that one in your diary so you don't miss out. Thanks to the EV team as well. That was a really great presentation tonight. And thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night. See ya.